Mike.
Before I give my speech, I'd like to pass out this newspaper from the communities, from the club that sponsored the last community speech that I attended. It's just a little bit of background. It's a newspaper from the Tacoma Mountaineers Club. They hosted a speech from a guy that toured, and it was a really great speech. It was a performance that I won't forget anytime soon. The 3 community speeches that I went to were either informative or entertaining, and I'm glad to say that I didn't pay a dime to see any of them except for the gas expense to go visit. They were totally worthwhile. I'm afraid that, I'm sorry that nobody else got to attend. I procrastinated and I lucked out because I caught all 3 of them in a 3-day period. And I'll begin with, the first one was the neighborhood that I live in. They have their monthly meeting every 3rd Wednesday, so I was lucky to catch it right at the right time. It was just a neighborhood council. The chairwoman's name was Ginny Eberhardt, and she was a very accomplished speaker. She went through everything very quickly. I didn't have any trouble following along. It was boring material, but necessary. School closures, cleanup, volunteers they're asking for, the library budget, just the really boring stuff. But she got through it quickly. I noticed that her posture was impeccable. She used her hands. Everything that these speakers did was as we're taught, and they were doing it as second nature. I couldn't detect any. These people were professional, or they were very practiced at the material they were doing. There were the 2 other speakers, well, there were several. The ones that I remember, the fire department had a spokesperson basically giving a news bulletin of the neighborhood for that month. The bear hunt, the gangland slaying in our neighborhood, sort of a rare occasion. I was able to get this information before the newspaper even got it, which I thought was rather interesting. Don't need a newspaper, just go to those meetings. There's a fellow named Dan from the fire department, and he went through the usual stuff, fire safety and all that. I managed to stay awake because it was very short. And the conclusion of that speech had to do with the new Titlow Park, all the money that they're going to spend on it. I was about ready to say, why are you spending all the money? Only people from out of the neighborhood come in there, and they're the ones that cause trouble anyway. But I kept my mouth shut because I thought, well, if they're going to spend money on my neighborhood park, who am I to protest that? So I didn't say a word. But the next 2 speeches that I attended were much more interesting. I took advantage of the free 3rd Thursday down at Tacoma Art Museum on Pacific Avenue. They were hosting a film presentation. It was a homemade film, actually. The theme was Zeit Bike Festival. There were a couple of homemade, there were these bikes that were basically works of art, functional to an extent. Unfortunately, that day it was rainy, so that the demonstration was cut short. I didn't get to see that. And the film I wasn't too interested in, but I should have seen the entire part of that because it had some really nice machinery on there. They were like float. If you can remember the Animal House float that they made out of an old Lincoln, these would have fit perfectly with that movie. Only they were better. A lot more time and effort went into these, but they didn't have any motors in them. Each one had its own. There were 4 operators, each pedaling to save his life, to get these things moving. They weighed anywhere from 700 to 2,000 pounds, and it took. They used motorcycle chains, motorcycle transmissions. Each person operated 1 wheel to drive these things. Of course, each person was doing it at his own pace, so they weren't going very fast. But it was interesting. The film itself wasn't so much, was supposed to be a race, but it was more of a parade, seeing all these different forms of art and engineering. And I interviewed, I almost forgot the name of the speaker. It was hosted by a Dr. Oliver Newsom. He's the guy, oh yeah, I guess I could, no, I'm not going to, I hope you can read that. It says Ollie Lama Film Productions.
On the left. at the
There's a
bottom.
knob at the
A
top,
knob, above it.
Oh,
Yeah,
Here,
just
to the
turn
left, left of that.
Other
on
side.
the
Mike.
left end,
all the way at the end,
the other end.
other
Other
end.
end.
this end,
Yeah.
my other,
Your other end.
Yeah.
there you go. All right, that's his business card, my token prop for this. He was there to push his film. This was his little pet project that he'd done, and he was an interesting speaker. He was very passionate about it, but not nearly as interesting as the third speaker. This was hosted by the Tacoma Mountaineers Club. They have a clubhouse down in Old Town on 30th Street, and this was by far the most worthwhile speech that I'd gone to. This guy's name was Willie Weir, and in those circles his name precedes him. I'm sure Dr. Phil has heard of him. He does programs occasionally on KOW radio. He's an actor by trade, but he is a performer of the likes of which I've never seen live, and I didn't have to pay for any of it. His presentation was Fear and Hospitality, Cycling in South Africa. This was a bike tour that he had done 15 years ago, right after the apartheid government broke apart. So there was a lot of racial tension down there. His forte is bicycling, self-contained everything through some third world country, and he spends 4 or 5 months doing it. He uses as little money as possible, and the common theme he had here was you have to face your fears. He was told by 4 different native residents, don't do this, don't ride your bike down there. Every time he went against their advice and lived to tell about it. Once was really the only legitimate danger that he had. The rest of the dangers were imagined because of the social tensions. There was a black farmer told him, don't go down that road, you'll get mugged. White guy said, stay off that road. Park ranger said, these are private game reserves.